Welcome to the Wild Remedies podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Ancora, and I'm here to bring you captivating stories from some of the most fascinating people I've connected with on my own journey of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Okay, so I quickly just want to tell you guys about the epic holiday sale we have going on for the next few weeks. If you've been on the fence about trying our magic lattes, now is the time to jump on it because they are 20% off for a limited time. Just imagine yourself cozied up by the fire with a magical latte with benefits. We have 3 delicious flavors that help boost your immune system, nourish your skin from within, and reduce stress and help you sleep. And our latte blends also make the perfect gift for the wellness lover in your life. Our ritual box is our best seller. It has all 3 of the flavors and it has free shipping as always. And of course, it's included in our 20% off sale. So it's like the best deal ever. So do not miss your chance. Go to wildremedieshop.com or to the link in this episode show notes to get this offer today. What is happening, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Wild Remedies podcast. Today we chat with Sarah Swain. Ugh, she's so cool. I knew she was going to be super cool in real life. She's just so authentic on her social accounts. And yeah, we've been meaning to connect for a while and we finally did. And it was such a great episode. I'm really, really excited for you guys to listen to this one. If you haven't heard of Sarah Swain yet, she is a Canadian serial entrepreneur. And she quit her corporate gig with no backup plan back in 2017 and trusted herself to fly. Now she is an online business strategist and owner of 2 publishing houses. And she's really taken the Canadian small business landscape by storm and shows no sign of slowing down. This episode is really cool because we are discussing sovereignty. That is the theme of this episode. And this ties in everywhere from entrepreneurism to, sustainable food systems to politics. We're going to get into politics. Sarah she is so phenomenally well versed in politics here in Canada. And myself, and I know a lot of people here in Canada, have probably felt pretty powerless watching how things have unfolded the past couple of years. And she's been such a beacon of light through all of that by basically enlightening folks and reminding us that we do have the power for change, that in a democracy, the public servants work for us. And, so by following her, she was able to provide me with just so much valuable information and tools that made me feel like I could take back some control in my life, or at least be part of the democratic process. This isn't something that we really learn about much in school, right? Our school systems kind of keep us in the dark when it comes to how politics actually works in our country. And I'm sure, if you're listening from a country other than Canada, you're probably facing the same thing. So we kind of discuss why that is and how we can become more involved and why that's incredibly important, especially for people who are wanting more sovereignty in their lives. So more freedom, more choice, questioning systems and how we can build them in ways that are better for everyone. Because if you're Canadian right now, you're probably seeing a lot of our systems crumbling, and it's tough. There's a big strain on everybody right now, but it's also necessary, and there's a beautiful path unfolding. It's just very, very crunchy right now. So let's just jump into this episode with Sarah Swain. Oh my gosh, she's just brilliant. So many amazing nuggets. Wildly inspiring. If you've ever thought about starting your own business, this is definitely an episode for you. If you are, struggling just with what's going on in your country right now, particularly in Canada, a lot of great information in here as well. So sit back, relax, and let's jump into this episode and meet Sarah Swain. Sarah Swain. I have been looking forward to this interview for a really long time. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. How are you?
I'm fabulous. And yes, this has been a long time coming. I feel like we've been planning this for years after many failed attempts. So I'm thrilled to actually be here doing this with you today. So thanks for having me.
Yay. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's tough. We got a lot of things going on, but we did it. We're here, and I'm so excited today to chat with you about sovereignty.
Hmm.
It seems like a really big thing with your brand, which
Hmm.
I resonate very deeply with. It's one of my favorite topics, actually. Just like breaking free from systems. Whether that's medical or government, corporate, even the education system.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just something that systems have always bothered me in a way. Like I remember being a kid in school, even, and like I was like, why do we have to be here this whole time? Like, I'm falling asleep in class. I can just take the book home and read it and get an A. Like, why do I literally need to be here? Like, why do we have lunch break or like long break? Like, all these things. Like, can't we just condense it? Can't we just be here for like 3 hours and then just go home and live our lives? Just things like that used to drive me insane.
I can relate. Huge. And I too have been that person my whole life. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And as I got older and I started to kind of vocalize these things, then I kind of got slapped with this label of being just one of those millennials that can't accept things for how they operate. And the millennials always have to be dissatisfied and difficult to work with. I'm like, but it doesn't make any sense. Like that was me in the workforce, right? And the same questions were going through my mind. I was like, okay, but why 40 hours a week? Like, why can I not just be done work as a grown ass adult when I'm done my work and the job has been completed or whatever it is? And why do I have to ask for permission to take time off as though I'm a child in a classroom asking to go to the bathroom? Like it just it started to really mess with me when I was in my like late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And this was long before, pandemic chaos. I was just like, what are we doing? Why is everything like this? And my career that I had prior to me leaping out and going full time into entrepreneurship was in retail pharmacy. So you want to talk about a misalignment in my life?
No kidding.
Um, I saw the background of that leg of the healthcare system, and I'm like, hold on a second, like what are we doing here? Because this kind of feels like this system's in perpetual motion to keep people unwell in order to keep this industry alive. So yeah, I would say about 6, 7, 8 years ago, it felt like I was exploding on the inside of feeling so challenged by the way the world worked and feeling incredibly imprisoned by it. And I now have kind of come full circle in that whole experience and understanding that all of that was me feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, that my sovereignty was under attack and that I didn't feel as though I could be as I wanted to be, do what I wanted to do, and on what timeline. Um, there was always kind of a parameter around it. It's like you're free ish until you hit this, or you're free ish until you have to have that conversation, or you have to, fulfill this responsibility, or you have to report to this person. So it's kind of felt like I could expand to a certain extent, and then there'd be some sort of red tape around me that really prevented me from like living and fully understanding like what is the purpose of us even doing this life thing. So I relate. I was also that person who just started being like, this is weird, guys. No one else thinks this is weird that we're doing this with our life. Like it's our life.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
far as we know consciously, we get one of them. We'll figure the rest out after we leave our skin suit. But we get one. What are we doing? And that's where my head goes. That's what fuels me today. But it was a culmination of years of feeling very, very restricted in the level of experience that I could actually have in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, one of the benefits, I'd say, of what's happened over the past couple of years is that I think a lot of people are starting to ask those same questions because, we're seeing this huge exodus from the traditional workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are realizing, like, okay, maybe faced with their own mortality, with, all the fear and stuff that's been pumped out at people for many, many months now.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether it's fear driven or just reevaluating what priorities are in their lives, people are looking for something more. And I think in a lot of ways that's kind of pointing towards entrepreneurism, which
Mm-hmm.
is exciting, right? Both of us are down that path. And for me, like, I can't do it any other way. I am completely unemployable. I've tried. Like, I've even worked for companies that were, quote unquote, really cool and very Google-esque and had the rad office. And, you come into work whenever you want, but it's still like, to me, it felt like a trap and I couldn't do
Yes.
it. It's crazy. And there's so much that we can improve. And I think, you mentioned as millennials, we're kind of like questioning all of these systems and better ways of doing things. And this is kind of an opportunity for us to figure that out too, just even within our own organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Like my companies are everybody's pretty much on contract. I will every once in a while bring somebody in as an employee, usually to take advantage of a subsidy. And it's funny because literally went through this yesterday. But my bookkeeper, she's like, okay, so, we just brought somebody in so that, we could have her, most of her salary is, or her hourly wages is covered by the subsidy for the first couple of months. One of the only benefits of like the government, in my opinion, is being able to take advantage of some of these things. So I'm like, okay, we might as well. But she's like, okay, well, so and so work this day, and then there's overtime, and there's all of these things, and then we have to report to the government, and da 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 da, and then you have to give the government all of this money, and and I'm just like, why is this so complicated? Like, why can't we just like, show up, do the work for what's agreed upon, and just like move on with our lives? Like, it's just so, even though we are trying to break free from these systems through, whether it's entrepreneurism or whatever, it feels like there's still so much heaviness with this government overreach into like every aspect of our lives. And it's
I
wildly
couldn't
frustrating.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm so hyper aware of this. Like you said, the last couple of years have really, in a backhanded way, been beneficial in the context of people not just opening their eyes to, creepy agendas and things like that, but opening their eyes to their own lives and questioning the choices that they're making, and questioning the level of dependence or reliance that they may have on some of these systems. And I think it's been shocking to a lot of people when they've had those honest conversations with themselves about, like, where am I actually dependent on a system? And if you do an inventory of those things, it could be quite telling. So the journey of, slowly removing ourselves from these systems in order to fully embody sovereignty, not just sovereignty within, because I truly believe that freedom is a mindset, but really break free of things that we're just kind of depending on being there all the time in order for us to exist in our life. And what happens if that thing is removed? And the level of government that exists in every single one of these systems, if we really zoom out and look, they have their hands in everything. And I love watching old movies where you kind of get a glimpse of what life was like, 100 years ago. And it is to sit and think about the rapid rate of speed that the government has sprawled into our lives is horrifying. I mean, we're like talking 2 or 3 people ago, generationally, 2 or 3 people ago, we are, outside trying to find our food sources and cooking meals over campfires while we're, you know, traveling across the plains. And it's like, how in that, period of time has there been so much order and regulations created that when a new generation is born, that's just normal, right? And that's the trap that we're all starting to wake up to, is that whatever the last generation either perpetuated unknowingly or pushed forward thinking that it was the right thing to do, the next generation's born into it. And then we come out saying, well, that's just how it works. And we keep doing this generation after generation. So I think that the clause that we feel of the government and just about everything that we do is starting to rattle so many of us awake, that we're recognizing if we continue to play this game, this is going to bleed into the next generation in ways that we won't even be able to comprehend. There is a very fine line between having order in society and having complete control over society. And that's exactly what we're encroaching on right now. And I'm the type of person where I will pay out of pocket for my healthcare. I will avoid government subsidies because it's so ridiculous that like all these hoops that you have to jump through. I'd be like, I'd rather just pay the damn money and not have to deal with all of this red tape like that you're experiencing, right? I'd rather pay to if I had children, I'd rather pay to have them go into an education system. And then that's what that breeds the conversation of, oh, well, it must be nice to have money then. And that's something that we have also unfortunately normalized, is the disdain as a society that we have for people who have carved out a financial path forward for themselves, that do have access to these things, instead of asking ourselves, why doesn't everybody understand how to do this? Capitalism gets a really bad rap. And for someone who, from the perspective of someone who may not fully understand capitalism but has adopted the idea that it's bad, I can understand why they think it is. But if we actually zoom in, now going into the education system, and we ask ourselves, well, are we actually set up to succeed in capitalism? The answer is no. So we have one system over here preventing us from understanding how to thrive in capitalism. And then we have another system over here benefiting from the fact that people aren't thriving as a result of capitalism. And then angering and fueling the anti-capitalism conversation. Be like, see, if we didn't have capitalism, then everyone would be fine. And then cue the socialism dialogue, right? And socialism means more government. So all of these things are so wildly connected. And in my opinion, I could be entirely wrong on this. We'll never know. But in my opinion, the answer to all of this is personal sovereignty. If we can understand what we need to do as an individual first, and this is another difficult thing for people to do, because there's so much anti-individualism conversations happening out there, because we should be all part of the greater good and we got to do what's best for the greater good. We literally can't do that as a collective if we are not at our best. If we're not at our best, what are we contributing to the collective? So sovereignty has to be the answer. And being strong, being free, being financially free, having control over our time and our schedules, having full control over the choices that we make, having an abundance of choices to even make because of the type of life that we have created for ourselves. Think then, when you have that type of high vibrational human being that is so okay, more than okay on all the fundamental levels, what then can that individual do for the collective? And if we all embraced that and just asked ourselves, what do I need to do to bolster myself? It's all going to come back to, how do I free myself even more? If we were to all do that, we would not be in the world that we're in right now. We would live in an entirely different dimension in comparison to the state of our world, because we have been conditioned to be dependent on the government. And this is the narrative that has to flip before the next generation comes and they get born into, well, this is just how it works. And then it just keeps going. The cycle continues.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this concept of like being dependent on the government, but in actuality, I was having a conversation with my investment advisor a couple of weeks ago, and she told me something that just made me absolutely sick. And she's like, for the average Canadian, you are basically working for the government. I can't remember how many months out of the year it was, but it was like at least half of the year. When you look at income tax and that sort of thing, because we are just absolutely taxed to death in Canada. It's disgusting. You are working for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? When really it's supposed to be the other way around. And yet, like, where is that money going? Because if it's supposed to be for all of these great programs and what, I mean, like, we can just even talk about healthcare, which is an absolute dumpster fire in Canada. Like, we
What a
have
mess.
people dying waiting for ambulances. Like, if you have cancer, like, good luck.
Yeah.
You might get
Roll the
treatment in 5
dice.
you're dead. Yeah, like, it's absolutely wild. And I mean, I think people are starting to wake up to that now, because we are in a health epidemic. It has nothing to do with the virus. We're full of toxin overloads and stress and all of these things, and 2 years of fear and all of these things that are compounding. And people do need help, and they are finding that they're not able to find it through these, current systems that we have. And so people are looking for other options. But you're right, it takes resources at this point, because the things that should be subsidized aren't. Unfortunately, it's not the healthy things for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's talk about solutions. What steps can people start taking to start creating some of this sovereignty for themselves, and to be able to have the resources in order to, make these better decisions?
Yeah. For starters, I always recommend people do that quick inventory check that I mentioned earlier. Like, go through every fundamental component of your life and ask yourself, even just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How sovereign am I in this area of my life? So, whether that is your health, your finances, your relationships, your physical environment, um, the way in which things are accessible to you, food, water, supplies, things of that nature, and have an honest conversation with yourself about where you're at, because we have been tricked here in Canada to believe that we're free, but we're only free within the box that the government says that we're allowed to live in, right? And when we really start challenging these systems, if we're okay, if the government were to remove this system, what do I do? And if we don't have the answer to that, then we are by definition dependent on that system. And it usually comes back to money and what a person is able to afford, or what their level of affordability can provide them with, as far as the number of choices that are before them. And this bleeds into the whole trading time for money conversation, which is another bloody trap, and one that requires a lot of unlearning about what it means to create a livelihood for yourselves. And that goes back into the education system and what was kind of painted for us as a picture of like, what do we get to do when we grow up? Nobody told me that I was able to create value for people and charge money for it. That conversation never existed in any of my educational systems, whether elementary, high school, post secondary. It was always, how do you become an ideal employee? And I, if I look back on the things that I dabbled in post secondary, it was journalism, political science, and business administration and marketing. And those were kind of the things. So it's like my soul was kind of speaking to me like, these things are of huge interest to you, but the system told me that in order to be able to do those things for a living, then I had to go through these channels in these systems in order to be qualified to be able to do those things. And this is where people struggle with understanding entrepreneurship, because they're like, yeah, but like, I'm not qualified. By the system's definition, I am not qualified to market my business, but I market my business very, very well. And this is where we have to start challenging. Hold on a second. Who created these rules, and who says that I'm good at this or qualified to do this, and or I'm not good at this or not qualified to do this? So there's a fundamental piece of unlearning systems that has to take place in order for our minds to be open enough to asking ourselves, okay, well, what else is possible for me then? If I spent all my life doing this one job or working for this one employer, or I spent, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years in post-secondary to be able to do this very specific line of work for the rest of my life. And what am I without that? Who am I without that? What can I contribute? What value do I have without these things? Those are the questions we have to start asking ourselves is, well, what value do you bring? Let's just have the conversation. We're so used to being like, okay, this is what this employer wants from me. This is the ideal candidate that they are searching for in order to fulfill this job. And then our brains go into, okay, do I meet those criteria? How do I prove to them that I have the skills and abilities to be able to fulfill this job well enough that they pick me? When have we ever done like a life resume that invites us to ask ourselves, what are our skill sets across the board? What's the experience we have in our life across the board? It doesn't need to make sense for any one particular direction. Just allow yourself to ask yourself, what can you bring to the table that maybe would not have fit on someone's resume? What are the skills you have, the abilities? What are the things that you have achieved? What's the knowledge you have? What's the wisdom you have? What's the evidence you have? And just start compiling. And this is something that I did in 2016, 2017. I can't remember the year, but I can literally remember the day. I grabbed a bottle of champagne. I went up to my home office. I was still in corporate, miserable beyond beyond anything. And that bleeds into a whole other conversation about understanding what success means to me, but that's a whole other dialogue. But I sat there and I popped my bottle of champagne. I'm like, I'm going to figure out what the hell I could do with my life, because I know that I can't continue on this path, right? Like, I just know that I have no idea what I'm meant to do. I just know that it's not this. And I know that it's not going to find another job, because that was kind of like my vice. It's like, oh, this one's making me feel like hell. I'm going to go find another one. And I sat there and I just brain dumped everything that I'm good at, everything that I enjoy, everything that lights me up. And I just laid it all out on sticky notes on a big Bristol board. And it's just like this giant jargon of words. None of it made any sense together. I'm like, okay, cool. So here's all the things that I have. And then what I started to do was started to just kind of categorize things. And I went through this kind of like reverse engineering process of, well, what actually can I contribute if it's not in the traditional workforce? And by the end of this, probably also by the end of my bottle of champagne, I was looking at this Bristol board that showed things like leadership and podcasting and book writing and coaching and empowerment and events and team building. And I was like, oh, okay. Like all of a sudden, things started to get a little bit more clear. I was like, well, I have a lot of skills in these things. Like there's so many things that I was able to draw from my corporate career that I'm so grateful for, that, afforded me with those experiences to build upon those skill sets. So when I finally did muster up the courage to literally bounce out of my 6-figure job with zero backup plan other than I trust myself that I'm going to figure out what I can do. And I focused on those things that were on that Bristol board. Be like, okay, I know there's something here. I have to trust that I can provide value in these areas to people's lives and help them solve problems and help them, experience the transformation that they're looking for, help them be able to create the thing that they want to create, help them start the thing that they want to start, help them achieve the goal that they want to achieve. And that's where I was able to recognize, what else do I bring to the table overall in my life, not just on a resume for someone's job opportunity, but collectively. And that was 5 years ago. And that's exactly what I help people do now, is go through that same process that I did on my floor with my bottle of champagne. It's like, let's talk about everything that you can bring to the table and figure out what your thing is. Now, that's not to say that everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship can be an absolute train wreck for people if we're not prepared for it. But what it does do is allow people to understand, at the very least, how to create another stream of income, even if that means that they're going to stay in their job, right? This isn't a mass exodus from the workforce, although that is my dream, is to see a mass exodus from the workforce and people becoming entrepreneurs, doing things on their own terms. Like that's my vision. But that's not necessarily right and true for everybody. But that doesn't mean that we can't figure out a way to bring in another stream of income, because what that income does is provide people with more choices. And those choices could be, do I have to live where I'm living? Or it could be, is there another educational system that I can put my child into? It could be, is there another form of healthcare that I can afford for myself or my family? It could be, my employer has struck down with another mandate that goes against my value system. Do I have enough of a financial cushion right now to be able to take the blow if they were to let me go? Like that's what money does, is provide more choice. So our job, if sovereignty is the name of the game, our job is to figure out how to bring in as many streams of income into our lives as we can in order to be able to afford choice. Because that's what it all comes down to, is people feeling like their backs against the wall. They don't know what to do. They don't feel like they have a choice. And then therefore they stay in a life that doesn't light them up. It's not enjoyable. If they're not happy, they're probably not healthy. If they're in an environment that's not conducive to their own spirit, it's probably not going to make for a very great life experience, given how many hours of our lives we spend in our career. So that's where I get so lit up, is helping people understand, like, you do have something to bring to the table. We've just never been afforded the opportunity, or probably even the thought of asking ourselves, what else can we contribute to the world outside of the 9 to 5 that we do for a living?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what people need to realize too is that this is a really empowering and fun process for someone that maybe hasn't taken a hard look at, what are the things that I actually love to do?
Yeah.
What are things that light me up? Because it's not just what you can provide people. That's extremely important, obviously, because you need to have something that can solve problems in order to have something marketable. Um, but you get to learn about yourself in this process and move into a space where you're doing something that you actually love. Like, it blows my mind. I just, my heart breaks for people. And I've seen this, like, with our parents' generation, the whole mindset was like, you pick a career and you do it, whether you like it or not, for the rest of your life or pretty close to. You get to retirement age. Now your health is failing because you've been doing something that you fucking hate for the past like 40 years or whatever. And then you're questioning, you have all of these regrets. And is this really what I should have done? Because how actually far ahead am I? Because now we have inflation and we have all of this other bullshit that's going on with the government that is just taking away people's resources at just an absolutely phenomenal rate right now. So yeah, I really hope that, what we're saying right now, and to anybody who's listening who might be struggling right now, can just inspire people to just start looking at this process, because it's just, yeah, it's so empowering. It's what we need in order to start dismantling some of these
Yes.
systems.
Well, yeah, the freer the individuals are, the harder it is for systems to exist. The only reason systems exist is because we're reliant on them, because their relevance is so high right now because of our reliance on them. So that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Remove the level of reliance. And that is, obviously, it goes without saying, there are people who have true dependence on systems, and I believe that systems need to be there for those people with true dependence on those systems. But we have created dependence for people that shouldn't have it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think, you know, doing what you love is the name of the game. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I've also seen entrepreneurs create businesses that they hate,
Yeah.
for the sake of of creating a different life for themselves or a different stream of income, and then they kind of end up back in the same situation they were when they were in the workforce. Um, so how you feel about what you do is so important, and if you can figure out what you love and figure out how to monetize that, then you're winning. Like, you are winning. And maybe this is a good time to bring up the whole success conversation, because that was a pivotal aspect of that transformation for me, was challenging what success meant. And society's definition is really bent. It's all about, do you have a good education? Did you get good grades? Did you get a good job? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a marriage? Do you have a car? Do you have vacation? Do you have, children? Do you have pets? Do you have the recreational home? And it's like, those are the things that we're taught growing up, that if you have these things, and it means that you are successful, right? But I had all those things in my early 30s. And I'm like, the last thing I felt was successful. Like, I'm like, how could something that feels so awful be successful? It didn't make sense to me. So I challenged myself with, well, what, if I got to the end of my life, whenever that is, and I look back on my life, what would have made me say, damn it, like I was so successful in my life. Like, I did that right. All of the societal norms, like, we're not even anywhere remotely close to that conversation with myself. These words like time started roaring up to the forefront. If I had more time, if I had more control over my time, if I got to choose how I spent my time, that would make me feel successful. If I had more fun in my life, that would make me feel successful. If I had more choice in my life, that would make me feel successful. If I laughed more, if I was happier, if there was more joy in my life, that would make me feel successful. If I trusted myself, even when things didn't make sense logically, to do the thing anyway, that would make me feel successful. If I had the courage to be able to try things, like, that would feel really good. If I got to the end of my life, be like, I went for it. So recognizing that this path that I was on, that was on paper successful, realizing that in no way, shape, or form, if I got to the end of my life, would I have been so proud for the successful life that I lived. That was pivotal for me. And then it became this kind of puzzle, right? That's the fun of entrepreneurship, is trying to figure out what all this means and click all the pieces together and solve these issues that are in our way and understand ourselves more, so that we can start making decisions in our lives and businesses that align with those life experiences that we want to have. And it's heartbreaking when I see new entrepreneurs, because if they don't figure it out in their first week or their first month or the first year, they get discouraged. And my thought process is like, even if it took you a decade to figure it out, and then you figured it out after a decade, and you are now living an entirely different life, and you are thriving, and your family is thriving, everyone is well, and you're happy. Like, would that 10 years of trying to figure it out not be the best thing you ever did? So that's the game of entrepreneurship though, right? It's like, can you hang on? Can you keep going when things get hard, when things get weird, when you feel really challenged? The answer has to be yes, because if you continue to trust yourself and be okay with things not going according to these master plans that, we can map out super easily on a whiteboard, don't necessarily translate into real life the way that we think they will. Can you get there? And if 10 years from now you were sovereign beyond any level that you ever thought you would achieve or experience, like, would that not be freaking worth it? Man.
Yep. Yep. I love that. That was a great rant. Very passionate. I feel the same way. And it's funny, like when I look back at my life, like I think the point where I felt the most successful was when I had way less stuff. Back in 2014, I sold everything that I owned and I moved to Malaysia to go work for a company, which obviously didn't last more than a couple of years because I hate working for people, but still a great experience. But I ended up nomading, I don't know, for about 4.5, 5 years. And so I lived in Europe, I lived in Mexico, I lived in the States, I traveled all over the place and just got to have all of these really incredible experiences. And I had time, I had the laptop lifestyle, which I still could have. I mean, with one of the businesses that I currently have now, it does require me at this point in time to kind of be here a little bit more physically. And I think also too, just being trapped here in Canada.
Also that, yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing, obviously, that kind of had me stuck for a little bit, but just not having stuff. And so since I've moved back to Canada and I'm a little bit more situated and, I have a home now and accumulating stuff that, also has to do with the business because we have a consumer product business. It's like it definitely feels more heavy. And I'm like, okay, so I need to kind of get back to that. And there was so much freedom in that too, because hot tip for anybody in Canada listening to this, and my gosh, did I ever love taking advantage of this. But if you are outside of the country for even a day over 6 months out of the year and you don't own any property, that's the catch. You don't got to pay any tax. So I was saving like 30 grand a year.
Oh my God.
By nomading. Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm going to tell my husband as soon as we're done this episode.
It's so great. But here's the thing. It's like, and now I'm struggling because, I'm watching all the ways that you're creating sovereignty in your life, which is absolutely amazing. I love that you have land and you've got the chickens and all the things. And I feel very, very called to do that as well. But I'm like, well, shit, as soon as I buy the property and do all the things now I'm really stuck, So it's like, it's kind of a catch 22. It's like, okay, do I flee or do I stay? And that's been this thing that I've been trying to wrap my head around, over the past couple of years, because sovereignty to me is being able to have control over all of the systems, right? Including our food and all of those things. And for someone like myself, it's funny, with everything that's gone down the past couple of years, I used to identify as a liberal, right? And now I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm just been politically abandoned. Up is down, left is right. Everything is just so crazy. And it's just been this huge paradigm shift to see what's, kind of surfaced. And I guess, I don't know, wanting to have sovereignty and, valuing entrepreneurship and all these things is now a far right ideology. Like I don't know where the fuck that came from. It's quite
Mm-hmm.
wild. But it's interesting because what I find sort of funny is, for me, climate change is an issue, right? Like we're seeing it. I don't know why this has become such a leftist issue. I think a lot of people along the spectrum are seeing that this is a real thing and that there's been a lot of damage that's done to the planet. But I love all the new information coming out that is showing like, okay, we can actually sequester a lot of the carbon that we're putting out into the environment by, regenerative farming
Mm-hmm.
and by having land and like learning to feed ourselves and all of these things, which I guess is a more quote unquote conservative thing to do, is actually what could save us,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's really like, I mean, there's so many daunting things that are happening in our world right now, but the climate change thing, I think is, it's fairly serious.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can all kind of come back to these, again, quote unquote, conservative values of just like taking care of ourselves and our neighbors and like learning to garden and, being more connected with nature and ourselves and our communities, like that to me is the way forward and what
I
I think people need to understand.
I agree, and it's interesting because I think people are starting to catch on to that game that's being played now, right? Where if you have these ideologies or these value systems in your life, you are therefore a dangerously privileged conservative and you present a harm to society. And that is a political game that's being played right now in order to discredit right wing parties and to publicly defame conservative so that people wouldn't dare associate themselves with what it means to have, even just being in agreement with conservative policies. Um, this is a tactic that I'm glad so many people are waking up to. Um, and I hope that more continue to do so because this was a kind of a big pivotal moment when the convoy happened, right? And immediately it was labeled. And we know now from the emergency commission review that the narrative was formed by the Liberal government prior to the truckers actually arriving in Ottawa. They already decided the angle that they were going to publicly run with informing society, Canadians, about what this movement stood for so that the general public who's tuning in from the mainstream media would be hesitant to or terrified to be seen as supporting in any way. And the only reason for that is so that the Liberal Party wouldn't lose support by actually by people actually turning their head and listening to what this group that converged in Ottawa actually had to say and what they were actually taking a stand for. So the goal is to make the right as gnarly as humanly possible in the eyes of the general public, that you're like, oh, I don't want people to think that I'm that, or I'd like, that's not me. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a white supremacist. I don't hate the environment. I don't have an intolerance for marginalized communities. Like I, therefore I'm definitely not that, so I got to stay over here. And that's how right now the left, who is arguably uh, destructive as all hell right now when it comes to personal sovereignty of any kind, that's how they are succeeding at this, is to make people fearful of being associated with right-wing policy. And I agree with you that if we kind of all just lived our lives and wanted to be left alone and raised our families and, secured our food supply and had a garden and a couple chickens and, didn't have all of these carbon footprints from mass transportation of goods and all this plastic wrap and all of these things that are not helpful for the environment. Like, why on earth are we not doing that? Why is that not a position that a assumably left party would want to do if the goal actually was to protect the environment? Why wouldn't they? Why? Because it removes us from their systems too much. And that's the name of the game. So the more people that are recognizing that, realizing that, like, what do you mean the carbon tax is going to fix the environment, but you're not going to have any type of government program that teaches people how to grow a garden?
Yeah.
These are the questions that people are asking now. Like, oh, hold on a second here. Why this doesn't make any sense? Like, there was a country, I can't remember where it was. My husband was telling me about it the other day. They had one of their municipalities did like a pilot program for chickens, and they surveyed their community and said, we're going to try this, and hands up if you want to take part in this, we'll pay for your chickens. Everyone gets 3 chickens or something like that. You get a little coop. And the municipality paid for this. And I can't remember how many people in the community got the chickens in the coop. But the actual data that they had on like waste elimination,
Mm.
and just like empowerment of the community and the way that people were supporting one another, like everything shifted just by
Great.
having a couple chickens in everyone's backyards, right? Like all of a sudden, like narratives started shifting, thought process started shifting, to like, what else can we do here that is within our control, that we don't need the government to come up with these policies on how we're going to quote unquote save the world from imploding on itself, which is going to do on its own regardless. Like the fact that us humans think that we can stop the world from going through its own bloody cycle is laughable to me. Our carbon footprint does not help by any means, but it's going to happen eventually. However many hundreds or thousands of years, like the world will do what it's going to do, regardless of what humans or governments do. Um, but this is where sovereignty is what breaks their system. That's why they don't want us to have it. The less we need them, the less relevant they become. The less things that they need to save us from, the less groups of people that they need to save us from. So it's so important on the political front for people to be really, really discerning on what the narrative is for political parties versus what the policies actually are for the political parties. Like, look beneath the headlines, look at what these bills actually say, look at what they represent, listen to the debates, listen to what the parties are actually saying to one another. And if people that are listening have never done that before, I can promise you, you're going to be gobsmacked at what you witness, from the parties that you believed to be the good guys. And that's the craziest thing right now, is like we have politically homeless people such as yourself. You're like, I've never identified as a conservative a day in my life. Like, what? But like my own party has like completely gone mad with policies. So like, where do I live? And it's when I survey my community, I'm like, where'd y'all come from on the political spectrum, right? Because I am someone who has always very much been an advocate for more right wing policy, and I say that very publicly these days, because we need to have open dialogue about this. And when I do these surveys, it is majority former NDP supporters or former Liberal supporters that are now like, what the hell is going on the political playing field? Because I feel like they've been duped. They feel like they've been roped in to support these parties who are now arguably causing our country a significant amount of harm, all under the guise of doing the right thing for the greater good. So it's inspiring for me to see that more people are paying attention, politically, and that more people are actually looking into policy and asking ourselves, like, is this true? What the media is saying about this? Is this true that the conservatives are this bad? Like, is it true that this, carbon tax is going to keep the world alive for another billion years if we, pay more at the gas pumps? Like, we just got to start asking better questions. and be open to changing our minds sometimes when we're presented with new information.
Absolutely. I mean, my mind has been changed many, many times over the past
Yeah.
few years. I think at one point, oh man, I remember, I don't know if it was like my late 20s or early 30s, and I was watching all of, the Leonardo DiCaprio documentaries and the Doom and all this stuff. I was like, 1000% we need to be eating crickets, like that. We definitely need to be doing that. And, I went vegetarian, and I was just like so shitty to all my friends who ate meat and all of these things. And it was just, so I get it. It's almost like kind of people have to go through like these stages
Yes.
to kind of be able to see the whole picture. And like, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to
Yes.
change your mind. And for anybody who's listening who, doesn't follow Sarah on social media, I highly, highly recommend it, because your expertise in politics is just, oh my God, it's a breath of fresh air. That's one of the reasons that, I connected with you and found you during the pandemic, is because you actually know what the fuck is going on. Like, most of us have no idea how
Mhm.
politics work. And many of us feel just so disempowered. And it's, we throw our hands up in the air, and it's like, well, fuck, we can't do anything about it anyway. They're just going to do what they're going to do. And we feel totally disempowered. But you gave us like so many tools. Like, there was like a movement that you created. We were writing letters to, like our MLAs and all of these people. And they're kind of listening, like it's slow, but we're seeing it now, right? Like
Yeah.
the narrative is changing. There's a lot more pushback. And if people just stay silent and do nothing, nothing's going to change.
It's true. And this has been really, I don't know. I don't even know what the word is. It's left me with my jaw on the floor, because I never in a million years thought that I would see Canadians pay any attention to politics, let alone the level that people are getting involved in now. And this stems back to like dinners with my family and my parents, my dad specifically, always ranting about politics and ranting about how the media is not telling the whole truth, and they're always coming after the conservatives. And so I was always kind of very much aware of that from a very young age, that there's definitely a slant going on when it comes to how things are broadcasted, and it's now just completely so far slanted, it's completely out of control. um, but I've always been politically keen, and that's, with thanks to my parents for always just having open political discussions in our house. So I was just kind of raised that way, but always very, very fearful of sharing my political views with people, because year over year, you identified anything remotely close to conservative, like you're publicly left out to like socially hang pretty much. There was no dialogue allowed about it. You're just automatically labeled as something really bad. And there was no room for conversation. So I knew that I could never defend myself. So I just kind of pretended like I was not conservative. And um, what's happened now, because, our parliamentary system is complex, arguably archaic, and it's complicated for people to follow along if you've never paid any attention before. And let's go back to the education system for the 17th time in this conversation. We had half a credit in civics in Canada, in most places. Of course we don't know what the hell is going on in our political system. Like, why would the average Canadian understand how parliament works? So I kind of, I when I started using my voice throughout the pandemic, because I literally couldn't. The inside of my body hurt that I was wanting to speak so bad, and I eventually made the decision in early summer of 2021 to start, kind of opening that can of worms, fully embracing the fact that I was probably going to lose everything as a result of doing so. But it wasn't until the convoy that I was like, it was the invocation of the Emergency Act. And people are like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And there was all this panic out there, right? So I'm like, okay, well, here's what it means. And I started to share about that on my feed. And all of a sudden, I had like a huge group of people showing up to understand like what is going on right now in our federal government. I'm like, wow, people are actually wanting this information. So I did this like live broadcast. Does anyone want to watch the CPC's motion to remove mandates? Because the CPC, Conservative Party of Canada, put a motion before the House to remove federal mandates. And this was as a result of the convoy and the pressure that was being put on. And people are like, what is emotion? Like, what does this mean? So I'm like, all right, I'll just open up a Zoom line. We can all watch together. I had over 500 people sign up to watch that Zoom. And my head's going like, what on earth? Like, I've never been able to have a conversation about politics with anyone other than my close family my entire life. Now I have over 500 strangers on a Zoom call with me
Yeah.
watching a vote for a motion, right? So I just kept going. I'm like, people want to know how this works. So I just started sharing all of my random political knowledge. And that also compelled me to like dig even deeper into my own level of understanding about our parliamentary system. And that's it just sparked a movement. It just happened so naturally that people were like, oh my God, like democracy, that means I'm in charge. It's
Yeah.
like, yes, that's exactly what that means. It means we have a lot of work to do. So yeah, it's been amazing to see how many people have been so activated, and it wasn't something that I had any desire to, all of a sudden brand myself as like the Canadian political aficionado that everyone now wants on their podcast to talk about politics. I was like, what is happening right now? Oh my God! Like I did not sign up for this, but I guess someone's got to, do this work right now so that people can um, start to activate themselves and recognize the power that they have. Um, so it's amazing to see now, almost a year later, how many people are just involved. And I had people messaging me from Ontario because Ontario had their municipal elections. And there were like 3 people that messaged me saying, I'm running. And I'm like, whoa, like that is just,
Wow.
yeah, that was just the cool. So I'm like following their accounts. I'm like, oh my God, like they're in their debates tonight. Like it was just so I had this very kind of like full circle moment of like knowing that I did what I set out to do. And it feels like I've passed the torch now, like to the rest of the people who have now learned at least to a certain point of like what does this all mean and what does that mean for me as a person who lives within Canada. um and that excites me. That gives me a lot of hope, that so many people were willing to face off with their own political ignorance, because that's what we were dealing with on mass scale in Canada.
Oh,
Was
guilty. Like,
mass political ignorance. And election after election, I'm just sitting there shaking my head. I'm like, we're so screwed. Oh my God, Trudeau's
yeah.
back in power again. We are so screwed.
Yep.
And it's yeah, it gives me a lot of hope because people are empowered, people are taking control, people are understanding the power that they do have within our political structure. And I know there's a lot of dialogue out there that so it's left wing, right wing, all the same bird, or elections are rigged, or there's no point because my vote doesn't matter. And I've had to really, that's been like an uphill battle to face over the last year, as I've been a voice in the political scene accidentally. But I think more people are recognizing that, like, well, duh, like if we all do that, if we all keep our hands off the wheel entirely, like that is how this beast has grown. This is how our government has become so freaking enormous. Trudeau's touting all of the new jobs that they've created. Well, 97% of them are federal government jobs. Like,
Jesus.
we got to
That we're paying
talk.
for.
I know. Like, we got to talk about how fast this government is growing if we don't intervene. So, taking our hands off the political scene, not paying attention, in my opinion, is not the answer. I don't believe that it's either sovereignty or political activation and not both. I think it has to be both. I think that we have to be as individually sovereign as humanly possible and do whatever means necessary in order to instill that in our lives and bolster our families and our households, our life experience, our finances, our food supply, our health care, our overall health, all of that. Like, that's our responsibility. And we also got to make sure that we have eyeballs on these motherfuckers in our federal government, all parties, not just the left. The CPC
Yep.
is very much included in this as well. Because that's the other warning I put out, being like, okay, guys, so if the CPC gets in and all of a sudden Polyev is the Prime Minister of Canada, you cannot tell me that you're all of a sudden just going to go back to your life because now all of a sudden you're safe. That's not how this works.
Nope. That's how we got
we
here in the first place.
we crawl up the conservative butts just as much as we did the liberals, and that's how we start to create a new system on the political front, is making sure that it doesn't matter who's in power, it doesn't matter what party has the reins, we are
Yeah,
on them because they work for us.
absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, remember, people, like, these are public servants. These individuals are supposed to work for us,
Mm-hmm.
not the other way around. And so it is just time to wake up. We got to start doing things another way.
Yep, agreed.
Well, I feel inspired to take action. For anybody
Yay.
who's listening and wants to be part of this movement or wants to learn about what they can do to exit these systems, how can they learn? How can they connect with you? What amazing things are you offering for folks these days?
Oh, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about the things that I'm doing. I really appreciate that. Best place to find me is my Instagram account. That's where you can figure out if you like me or not, probably within 24 hours or so. And you can find me at I am Sarah Swain. And my website is sarahswain.ca. And yeah, this is basically what I do. I help people understand how to create more choice in their lives by creating new streams of income. And I rant a lot on my Instagram about politics. So you're bound to learn something there too, or maybe just a different perspective than maybe you're used to seeing on social media, since folks like me kind of tend to get buried pretty easily in the algorithms. So I like that you said that it's a refreshing space for you, because my dialogue is always very real.
Yeah.
It's always from my heart. It's never for any intention other than speaking my truth and hoping to God it lands in the ears of the people that need to hear it, whether it's on the political front or the entrepreneurial front or the freedom family front. It's been a blessing to be a voice in all of this. There's definitely some curses with it for sure. But overall, net positive, and just really grateful that people like being in my space, and just kind of hearing a different take on things than what is typically in our mainstream systems. So I'm kind of the counter system, I guess is how you could probably summarize me. Is it's like, okay, this is what's happening over here. This is being broadcasted, and I'm going to give you my point of view on it. But sovereignty is it. That's it. Everything I do stems from that place, and that's a result of me, going through my own awakening over the last couple of years, and literally stripping away anything that is not even remotely close to being authentically me, and rooting myself into my values system, which are freedom and integrity. I'm rooted in those. So everything that I create is from that place. And that's what I support people in doing for themselves too. And the last thing we've got going on, the most flippin' craziest roller coaster ride ever, is our book called The Sovereign. And this was 14 beautiful humans across Canada that said yes to a publishing project that I thought of back in fall of 2021, when it felt like the world was closing in on me. here in Canada. And the freaking book right now, as we're recording this, is literally in the mail system all throughout Canada right now. So it's gone to print, and we just did a crazy pre-order campaign, and never sold so many books in my entire life. And I say this as a publisher. Um, so it's exciting to know how far these stories are going to reach, and how important the journey to personal freedom is, and how different those journeys are from one person to the next. Um, so these stories are really, really impactful. They're we didn't know each other before all of this, and yet we all ended up in this book together, and our worlds collided as a result of these last couple of years. But the paths that each of us walked in order to fully embody what it means to be sovereign, so different from one author to the next. So that is literally going to be arriving on my doorstep any day now. So if people missed the opportunity to order that, it will be up on my website in the future for sale there. And we will be on Amazon in January, for folks that prefer not to pay $3,000 in shipping here in Canada, which I
Yeah.
totally understand. But yeah, that's what's going on in my world.
Amazing. Well, I mean, just much gratitude from me to you, because yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done without these brave messages that you put out the past, I'm not sure at what time, in this process that I found you, but I'm glad I did, because yeah, you brought sanity to me. You brought sanity to a lot of people in my community, and just a feeling of empowerment, and realizing like, hey, okay, yes, we know things need to change. It feels like we don't know how,
Mm-hmm.
but now we kind of have some tools and we are seeing progress. So it's empowering, and that ties into this aspect of sovereignty that, I don't know, I feel like we all need to move towards. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for sharing your time and energy with us today. We'd love to hear your feedback on how our podcast has impacted your life, and are also open to suggestions for new and interesting topics. Please leave your comments with a quick review to help us grow this magical community of wellness warriors and light workers. Every month, we select one lucky reviewer to win our big magic box containing all 3 of our beautiful magic lattes. To connect with us further, check us out on Instagram at wild_remedies. Thank you again, and see you at the next episode.